Welcome to the Man Amongst Men podcast. Live a life of intentionality, adventure, and brotherhood. Take the inner journey and live out over your edge constantly. Here are your hosts, Dominick and Bryan.
I don't know if Bryan and I have ever had more fun recording an episode than this one on gray areas and secret stashes. Where we came up with the idea was over the past year, we've been running live events in New York City called The Discerning Dick Sexual Wisdom for the Modern Man, which is really a forum for men and women to come together to explore issues that are typically undiscussed by men in the arenas of sexuality, sexual desires, questions, curiosities. And one of the themes that we saw come up over and over and over again were these questions that men had with respect to their behaviors that weren't black or white. They were gray areas. For example, if I'm married and I'm looking at porn and my wife doesn't know about it, is that okay or not okay? If I'm in a committed relationship and I love my partner, but I'm still connected to women that I dated in the past on social media and still like their pictures, still get turned on by their pictures, I might even still fantasize to old pictures that I have of them that's not on social media. Is that right or wrong? And so there's so many of these gray areas in our modern society around dating and sexuality and intimacy that, if left undiscussed, can sabotage relationships, or at the very least, create secrets that don't feel very good. So in this episode, we decided to focus in on this one arena that many men can relate to called secret stashes. Most men that we've talked to have some sort of secret stash of pornography, of pictures and videos from past lovers that they maintain somewhere, whether it's in your iMessage inventory or it's on a hard drive. And you'll hear on today's discussion how Bryan wrestles with a situation where he had to think about giving up a stash that he'd built up over the course of 10 years, that I built up one over the course of 15 years and had to get rid of it during Sex Addicts Anonymous. And on this podcast live, I get rid of a secret newer stash that's been causing me problems. And you'll hear how I work through that process live on this, well, not live, but recorded on this episode. So enjoy this first conversation of gray areas around secret stashes. All right, Bryan, I got a gray zone story for you. I wanted you to weigh in on it. After our most recent Discerning Dick event here in New York City with Sexual Wisdom for the Modern Man, we bring men and women together to talk about undiscussed sexual issues. One of the men approached me afterwards and he confronted me with this scenario. And he said, Dominick, I've been dating someone for a long time, and in bed, when we're having sex, I sometimes think about other women that I used to sleep with and porn that turns me on so I can maintain my erection when we're having sex. Is that cool or uncool?
Oh, boy.
Let me complicate it for you even further, okay? He said the reason why he does that is because during their sexual experiences, sometimes he's gone soft and his girlfriend has shamed him for it. What's the matter with you? You're not a man. Get that together. And as a result of that, he went into a shame spiral. In order to combat that, he started pulling in these other scenarios as an effective tool to stay hard. It's been working. She's been satisfied. Is that cool or uncool?
Oh, God. There are so many layers to this. Yeah. And also so common.
Right?
I feel like this is a story that happens a lot that guys probably don't talk about all that often unless you're in the business that we're in, right, where guys actually bring this to you and talk about it. Let me break this down. Dominick, based on the story that you heard, do you think that the girlfriend would be pissed off or upset or angered if she knew her boyfriend was doing this?
Yeah, was thinking about someone else, right, or something. Absolutely, she'd be upset.
Okay, so she'd be upset. Got it. Question 2. Is there a benefit that he's not getting because he's doing that?
The obvious answer is he's completely disconnected from her. She doesn't even know how disconnected she is from him because he's bringing in these outside thoughts. He's not even with her, but he's protecting himself because he's felt like crap before. He's felt emasculated.
the symptom is being taken care of, the source not so much.
Right, like short-term problem fixed, long-term problem exacerbated.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a reason that I think we called the live event that we do called the Discerning Dick.
Yeah.
Because it turns out that our dicks are smarter
than we've given ourselves credit
than
for.
we've given them credit for. And so my go-to is, if there's a performance situation going on, it probably doesn't have anything to do with the dick. Now, there are cases in which you have to go to a doctor and get pills because there is a physical limitation. This doesn't sound like a physical limitation.
Yeah.
This sounds purely, especially because he's not even taking a pill, he's just using his mind.
Yeah.
And so I do wonder more, let's call it holistically, about, yes, their sex life, but also their life together and the conversations that aren't being had.
Yeah.
Is this a gray zone? Like, yeah, this is definitely a gray zone.
Yeah, it is a gray zone. And it's, like you said before, a common gray zone. Because we've asked our audiences before, we're like, guys, if you were to come clean, how many of you have thought about porn, have thought about a previous partner while you were having sex with someone as a tool to perform better, perform the way that you want, stay hard, or to come on command? And almost every guy in the room has raised their hands or has nodded, or given you a wink and a nod, like, I'm not going to raise my hand in here, but like, yes, I do that. And if you think about the dynamics that are created around there, it's like guys are trying to protect themselves. Like in this scenario, this gentleman felt like he was shamed for not performing, and his woman wasn't curious about it. She was abrasive about it, right? And that happens sometimes. Other scenarios, women are amazing and welcome that and laugh about it, not laugh at someone, but kind of like, hey, what's going on? Let's have a deeper conversation. Let's use this as a tool to get to know each other better.
And Dominic, it's so easy to sit here and be like, well, hey, be open, have the conversation with your wife or with your girlfriend. The mental energy that it takes to think through, what do I want to say? How is she going to react? What is the outcome that I actually want? Is she now aware that I'm actually thinking about this? Like all these hurdles that we go through, it takes some energy and it takes some time. And so
vulnerability, man. And vulnerability. Like you're exposing yourself and like some of the things that are going on inside your head that you feel least confident about that could trigger her also. And then you have to hold that emotionally. Like it requires a Herculean effort if you've never done it before. And so in the moment, it's so easy to kind of stuff that down and then just do something else to get past it.
Well, it's time to have sex and I want to get off and like I want to perform well enough so she gets off so that she doesn't yell at me or make me feel bad about myself. So you know what? I'm going back to the old porn stash or I'm going back to the old ex-girlfriend or whatever it may be to solve the immediate problem without having the confrontation.
Right. And even if you're not in a long-term relationship, if like you're talking about with someone new, you and I have both talked about this, like if you're thinking about wanting to perform and look really good for that other person and she's like, oh my God, I've never had a man like you before. You can go so long and like you're doing that because you're using all these other mechanisms that are not connected to her. In the short term, you look like a god. In a long term, you're completely disconnected and you create this trajectory where there's an expectation of your performance and the way things are. There's a pressure that you start to put on yourself. And we've seen this collapse around ourselves, but also many of the men that have come to us. You've got an amazing story about something that you kind of kept hidden, that you didn't even know you were keeping hidden, that had the potential to sabotage your relationship a couple of years ago, right?
This is a little while ago. I was at a bachelor party. And after the first night out, we had a late night, woke up on Saturday morning. We were all sitting in the family room drinking coffee. And it came out that a couple of the guys were part of the group. One guy was married and one guy's in a committed relationship. They went out after we all went home.
The night before?
The night before. Okay. They went to get a Nuru massage.
A Nuru.
Nuru. Now, Nuru massage is when a woman is naked and the guy who's getting the massage is naked, and the woman oils herself up.
Yeah.
And basically rubs her naked body on a guy.
It's basically sex. Like almost.
It's not, from my understanding, it's not intercourse, but it's like dry wet humping.
It's 98.7% sex.
Right.
Okay.
Right. I said, oh, that's interesting. They were describing what they had gone and done that night before as we're sitting there drinking coffee. And
when they were telling the story, was it like you guys got it listen to what we just did last night.
Oh yeah, it was like fun and games and like it was really good and like yeah, it was all good.
Okay.
And another topic that we're talking about that morning was about they're asking about the work that I do, right? And the work that I do is largely in the sexual health space and empowerment space, and the work that you and I do, like what we're doing on this podcast, in terms of like having these open conversations and living a better life because of it. So I asked them a question. I said, well, is this something, this new room massage that you want to do, is this something that you do often? Like, oh, well, you know, we'll do it at a bachelor party once in a while, like maybe outside of that here and there, but like it's not a big thing that we do. It's not something that we really are concerned about. I go, oh, interesting. Is that something that your wife knows about? Did she ask you, how was the new room massage?
You asked him that question?
Yeah, I asked a specific question.
Like with a straight face, you asked him that question?
Yeah, and 3 other guys that were in the room just about lost the coffee out of their mouth. Like this is the most idiotic question anybody could have asked. And I was genuinely I was curious, like, well, what kind of relationships do they have? Is it very open, or is there these gray zones, or these black and white zones? I don't really know. Yeah. They said, no, idiots. Like, we don't tell our wives about our new room massage. Like, oh, interesting. Okay. Like diving a little bit deeper, like seeing an opening to get into these guys. What else do you do in your life and in your relationship that your wives don't know about?
Right.
And if they did know about it, would be pissed. Like, that's the answer that I want. The one guy said,
how much time do you have?
Well, I'm on Tinder.
The married guy was on Tinder.
The married guy was on Tinder. And I said, interesting, what does Tinder do for you? He's like, I don't meet up with anybody. I just like to get out there and see what's still out there.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, interesting. And your wife doesn't know about it. He's like, no, my wife does not know about that.
Jesus. So this was like his little gateway, his little fantasy land into another world where he's single and gets to play that out somehow.
Yeah. He still his text game is still on there.
So he not only swipes, and he also texts and interacts with these women.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
He uses his real pictures.
That I don't know. That would have been a good question to ask.
Yeah, guys can be really
highly
stupid.
risky.
Yeah,
if you're using your own pictures. God. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. The point isn't like everybody's got their own things going on in their relationships, except me, right? Because this is the work I do, and I'm Mr. Empowerment guy. As we're having this conversation, they flip the tables around.
Right, because wait, how high on your pedestal are you right now?
Oh, yeah. I'm just, my arms are crossed.
looking down
at them.
Yeah, shameful.
Yes, shame. Okay. Sorry, Tinder guy. Get your act together.
Right, and then
it was not coming from a place of compassion or love. So the tables are turned, and they're like, all right, Mr. Truth and Honesty, what do you do? Like, what are things in your life, in your relationship? Because I was dating somebody at the time.
Yep.
And what are the things in your life that you do that if your girlfriend found out about it, she would be pissed?
Yeah.
I literally like kind of sat back more upright in my chair and looked at them like straight dead in the eyes, like ready to deliver the message that there's nothing I do. Like my girlfriend and I talk about everything and we are transparent and open. In that moment when I was about to deliver that, I was like, oh, there is that one thing that I haven't really thought about until now, but now that the question was posed back to me, I guess there is that one thing.
Yep.
And what that one thing was, Dominic, for about the last 10 years before that, I had a girlfriend or somebody I was dating, and we would take sexy videos or we would trade pictures back and forth. And over a 10-year period, I created a stash.
Yep. Your secret stash.
A secret stash.
A treasure trove.
Of selfie-ish porn, if you will. So every once in a while, throughout that 10 years, I would bring that stash back up. Like it was maybe
Where'd you keep it? Where does your stash, where did it exist?
External hard drive.
You bought like an external hard drive specifically for the stash.
It wasn't a very big external hard drive, but it was big enough.
Like 1 terabyte.
Yes, 1 terabyte. Right? Okay. It's more like 1 gigabyte, but yes.
Okay.
It was a significant stash. Let's just say that.
All right.
I realized that as we're having this discussion, Dominic, it feels insane to me to think that maybe that was okay or to not recognize it. But I didn't recognize it prior to that question being asked because it was just something I always did.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And whether it was like year 2 of the stash, and I look back at year 1's girlfriend, or year 7 of the stash, and I look back at the last 7 years of it, I never really thought about it because I asked myself, why am I doing that? And it wasn't because I was still in love with them. It was like a curiosity and something I had always been doing.
Yeah.
So now that this was in my awareness, I'm like, oh, shit.
Yeah. Like now it brings up a whole new set of questions that you had never considered before. Like the why behind having it was irrelevant before because it served a function, right? It was maybe you were bored, maybe you were tired, maybe you wanted to beat off whatever,
And I
any
didn't
reason?
have that answer. I was just I've always been doing
just had it,
I
yeah.
haven't explored why I do it. It's something I do.
It's kind of like how people accumulate physical things in their homes, right? Like you got that closet, you got the attic, you got the garage where things just pile up. You don't even question why you have it. You just have it.
Just have it.
Okay.
Just have it. And then I use it every once in a while.
Yeah, so
And honestly, like if I was to dive into it retrospectively, better to watch myself in a porn than go watch another porn. At least I know it's ethical porn.
You could rationalize that. I'm
Consented
sure.
porn for sure. I mean, there's all these I'm not doing anything wrong here.
Right.
So these guys, as they see me wallowing in my new self-discovery of, oh my God, I am doing something that I have not been transparent with my then girlfriend about.
And they're probably thrilled to put you on the ropes like that after your
they're completely
arrogance.
off the hook. I'm like, yeah, but new ruined Tinder. They're like, yeah, but ex-porn.
Yeah.
Right, let's talk about that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we discussed as a group. I mean, there's maybe 9 guys in the family room drinking coffee at this point.
All weighing in on your situation.
All weighing in on my
I'm
situation.
sure you're getting great advice.
Oh, great, yes, great advice.
Yeah.
And so here's the range of options. Now, most of the guys in the room, like, dude, like, you're not actually doing anything wrong. Like, just keep doing it.
Yep.
Like, there's nothing wrong. Like, you love the girlfriend you're with. Like,
Typical advice, yep.
You're not into that. Right. So that was, like, I would say the one extreme. The other extreme was, well, fine, just delete it. Delete it and don't say anything.
Yep.
And I had an aversion to that one because I did that one other time. Now, this is before this stash I created.
Yep.
Back in college, I had a really baby stash, real small stash.
But it had promise.
I had promise. It was a baby stash.
Right.
It was a seed of a stash.
Yeah. That could grow into a mighty oak tree.
That's right. And I started dating a woman. This is my junior year of college. And I had this feeling pop up inside of me, like maybe this isn't okay. So I said, you know what? I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to get rid of my baby stash, right? My little seed stash. And so I did. And 2 weeks later, we broke up. And I was like, son of a, I just got rid of 3 years of work.
Worst nightmare, man.
Worst nightmare.
I could feel you, man. That hurts me. Hurts me. Yeah.
So those are the extreme options of what to do, right? Just delete it on one side. On the other side, just keep doing it. It's not a big deal. Now, I do have this feeling in me where I do want a relationship that is not living in the gray zone.
Nice.
No room for shame or embarrassment. Like, we're talking about things.
We're hiding
open
secrets.
and transparent. The just keep doing it didn't seem like a good option for me. So we discussed other options. There was the one option that I brought up. Maybe I should just talk to my girlfriend about it. But I should just tell her, like, hey, this is something that's going on.
Yep.
And there's a couple lawyers in the room. They're like, you shouldn't do that. That's a bad idea, Brian. This is not a good idea. Don't just bring it up to her. But that was on the table. The other option is the option that we called it the Frodo option. And hear me out. So Frodo, Lord of the Rings, right? He had this epic journey to take the ring to a certain place, and he was the protector of that ring.
Yep.
And so the Frodo option in this case was to give my password-protected hard drive, external hard drive, to a friend.
Okay.
With very specific instructions. Now, you couldn't access the photos or the videos or anything, right? Because it's password-protected. He had one job as Frodo.
Okay.
And that was to hold on to that external hard drive until one of two things happened. One, if I got married, burn the hard drive. Upon me saying I do, light it up, burn the external hard drive, is gone. Right?
Yep.
Option 2 was, if we break up, give me the hard drive back within 24 hours.
Preferably sooner.
Preferably sooner.
Got it. This is how men process things like this.
I got a solution for you.
Probably 50% of this was completely serious. This was like a legitimate scenario.
There was no not seriousness of this.
Okay.
The last one, which we already talked about, was the just delete it. So I had my college experience where I deleted it and nothing happened. But for this one, I didn't want to just delete it because then I wasn't getting credit for it.
Yeah.
I wanted, this is a big deal.
What kind of credit would you have been seeking? How committed to the relationship I am? Look at how I'm vulnerable I'm being. I'm putting this on the table for you. Like, what kind of credit were you looking for?
All of those things. Yeah. Exactly that.
Okay.
I wanted to be look how open and transparent I am, because this is important. I'm setting a standard here, and this is a big deal for me.
Yeah.
This is 15 years or whatever it was at that
decade,
point in time.
You said, right?
Decade.
Yeah.
Decade of stash building.
Let me do a little side note here because I know what you're talking about. That decade, it's almost like that stash has become a friend. because that friend has been with you through all of your ups and downs, your short-term relationships and long-term relationships. It's been the one constant. I can speak to that because I personally know what that's like, having accumulated my own. And I'll talk about my stash process. It was one of the things that I did during my Sex Addicts Anonymous days, where I got rid of my stash. And a lot of sex addicts do this as well. It's like putting down an old dog. Like Old Yeller is going down. And it's a sad moment. It's a scary moment because it has been there. It has comforted you during those times where you felt alone or bored or needing a stimulation. It delivers. Yeah. It just delivers. Like, exactly. And to let go of something like that is harder than it may seem on the surface. So I get it. And having been burned, like you've been burned in the past, where you're like, let me do the right thing. And then 2 weeks later, it's over and you can't restore that thing. I know what you're talking about. So for anyone who's listening to this, have compassion for my friend Bryan over here as he struggles through this.
I appreciate it.
So you're still with these guys. You're still figuring out what you want to do. I do remember after you came back from that trip, you brought this conversation to me also. This was not just like there, like you pondered this for a while.
Well, now that it's in my consciousness, and I do truly want to operate in a transparent way, and that's the type of relationships that I want, I was like, well, now what? And at that time, Dominic, I did not want to just delete the stash, period. And most importantly, I didn't want to do it because somebody else was forcing me to do it.
So your girlfriend at the time, you didn't want to get rid of it because the expectation that she would have is for you to get rid of it.
That's right. And now, of course, she didn't know about it, so she wasn't telling me to do it.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to get rid of it for the wrong reason.
You want to do it on your terms.
Right.
Yeah.
If I was going to get rid of it, or just keep it on my terms, one of the two. There's about a 2.5 week period where this is a constant question. To your point, I brought this up to you, and I was talking to you about it, and I talked to a couple other friends about it. One friend said, like, what are you going to do with this porn? Like, just get rid of it. Like, what, is it an heirloom? Are you going to give it to your kid when you have a kid? Like, what are you going to do with it anyways? Like, just get rid of it. Stop it. And so the conversation with you, the conversation with a couple other people, I still didn't feel wrong for having it. But I realized all the mental hurdles, like all the emotion and time, quite frankly, mental emotion that went into this decision.
Yeah.
I didn't know what was on the other side of this decision, but I was like, man, like this is taking up a lot of cycles.
No doubt.
This is taking up a lot of time just thinking about this for like 2.5 weeks now. Like, holy shit, like, you know what? Like, maybe I should just get rid of this damn thing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Cut my losses. Like, let's just make a decision on this. So a lot of men short circuit this entire process because it can require a lot of mental and emotional bandwidth. And a lot of guys may say, is this even worth it? Is it really that big of a deal? And especially when you talk to a lot of other people who aren't really equipped to give you advice on this stuff, they'll just say, it's not a big deal, dude. Get rid of it. And in the short term, it may alleviate this concern because you've probably got a million other things going on. But the most important thing, which is really cool to hear from you, is that like you had this higher standard for your relationship that you wanted. So this became something that was bigger than just a stash getting rid of or not. Like you were talking about, what is the kind of relationship that I want to create going forward? Therefore, you wrestling with this for a period of a couple weeks was very much worth every ounce of effort and energy you put into it.
It's not just the decision that's happening now, but it's the standard that we set for ourselves and for our partners.
Yeah.
In this case, I wanted to like feel good regardless of the outcome, regardless even if she was going to break up with me. I wanted to hold that standard.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there was a very real possibility if I just decided to talk to her and be like, hey, just so you know, I got 10 years worth of X porn, and I love it, and I love
and
you.
I'm keeping it.
So are we cool?
Yeah, right.
Like, over this time period, when I decided that this is taking up too much mental energy, period, and maybe, just maybe, over the past 10 years, it has taken up some capacity of my brain, of my emotion, whatever it may be. I don't really know. Why do I hang on to it? What triggers me to actually bring it up? I didn't know any of that. And I still don't know. I haven't really dove into that because I decided that there's something. I don't know what it is, but there's something. Maybe it's time to just get rid of this.
Yep.
What I did is I got rid of it. I deleted the entire thing, but I still wanted credit for it.
Yeah, you did.
More important than the credit, I wanted there to be that transparency between my partner and I at that time.
Yep.
And so I went to her and I said, hey, this is something I've been doing. It's not just a you thing. I've been doing this for 10 plus years.
Yeah, yep.
And here's the story that brought it up. It brought it into my consciousness. It wasn't something that I did because of you. It was something I've just always done. Haven't really thought about it. Came into my consciousness as something maybe that you might not like. And she's like, you think, Bryan? Maybe I don't like that? Yeah. So right, got it. And I said, so I wanted to let you know that this is something that had been going on that was part of my life, and I also deleted it. I wanted you to know. And so her reaction was, she had some questions like, well, who's in it? Like,
who's in it? Yeah.
What
were you doing?
Did you really delete it? Is it really gone? The conversation went well. I mean, it wasn't like a pat on my back and say, congratulations, Bryan, way to evolve yourself. But it was one of like understanding and like, okay, like that's kind of weird, Bryan. I wish you didn't do that, but I kind of get it. And I'm glad you deleted it.
So this is really important, man. You were not received like a hero coming back from battle, like you just slain a dragon and protected the kingdom. And if your expectation was that, then your experience of doing this would have been like, shit, I made the wrong choice. I should have just kept it. What I really respect about how you went through this decision-making process, and you and I actually talked about this because you asked me what my opinion was, like, should I bring this up to my girlfriend? And I said, if you're going to bring it up to your girlfriend without having made a decision on what you're going to do with the stash first, you better be ready to get rid of it. Because if this is something that's a non-starter for her, you may have to confront the situation of getting rid of it. And you don't want to hold her accountable. You don't want to resent her for having that feeling because she's entitled to having that feeling. So what I really respect about you is that you went through this whole process, you know, and kind of like poked all the holes in all this and dealt with the emotions and the mental energy to come to your own conclusion of what felt right for you. And so when you did bring it to her and you didn't get that hero's welcome, yeah, it would have been nice, but it didn't change how you felt about yourself because you were the one who said, this is what's right for our relationship, what feels good for me, and in honoring her.
I contrast that from when I was in college. And there I felt I had this oh shit moment when we broke up 2 weeks later. I'm like, oh my God, he's got rid of my entire stash.
Yeah. And you did that because you thought it was the quote unquote right thing to do.
It was the right thing to do. Exactly.
Not because you really felt that it was the thing to do. It was because mentally you said it was the right thing to do.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
In this case, regardless of how she reacted, regardless of the status of our relationship, I was like, I'm good.
Yeah.
Like, I'm very happy with where this is at.
Yeah.
That much felt good, as crazy, as insane as that thought process that I went through. Like, it feels like a very good place. It feels like a new rule, a new way, a new standard for me to live also going forward.
Sure. So inquiring minds want to know, do you miss your stash?
I do not miss my stash. I thought I would, honestly. Even after going through all of this, making the decision to get rid of it, I was like, man, like, is it going to be 1 month in? Is it going to be 2 months in? Is it going to be 3 months in? Like, when am I going to be like, ooh, wish I had that 2007
right,
vintage
mint condition
California Valley, right? That's what I thought was going to happen. There have been times I've thought about it, but there's been no pull. There's been no need. Like, oh my God, I wish I would have kept like a secret version,
like a
somewhere.
longing,
or
a
there
regret.
hasn't been any of that,
right?
And more importantly, what there has been is clarity. There has been almost like a deeper connection because I'm not worried about what might get found out. I'm not worried about, is she going to pop in the external hard drive into her computer at some point in time and like see 10 years of porn stash of ex-girlfriends and think I'm a monster, right?
Yeah.
Even that little fear, as little tiny as it might have been, it's completely gone.
Yep. So it cleared up a lot of space. I'm not sure how much Marie Kondo would appreciate being pulled into the secret stash conversation, but one of the top 5 most influential books of my life is The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. I read it like 3 or 4 years ago. I'm infatuated with Marie Kondo and her show. I think she's amazing. I think she's brilliant. I think what she's doing for the world is fantastic. And she talks about, more so in the book than on her show on Netflix, this accumulation of stuff that we are unwilling to part with keeps us tethered to the past. And when we are tethered to the past, we are unable to truly create a future that we want to live into. These things that we claim are sentimental items, some of them are, but many of them are just ties to the past. We've seen this with some of our friends. Like there's a guy that we know who's been out of a relationship for over a year and a half, and it wasn't his doing, it was his partner's doing. But he's kept all of the artifacts and remnants from that relationship. Love notes, trinkets, things from vacations they've taken together, pictures, all of these things, and continues to revisit them, continues to feel the longing, and is unable to say goodbye to that partner who's already in another relationship, who's clearly moved on, who's clearly demonstrated that she's not interested in rekindling a relationship. But this person can't seem to move forward because there's still that tethering to the past. As dissimilar as it may seem, like with your porn stash scenario, it actually is on the same spectrum where revisiting those old stories keeps you tethered to those relationships of the past, keeps you tethered to however maybe you looked or felt in the past, which prevents you from dedicating that energy and that space to the relationship of the now and the relationship of the future. So I think it's really cool that you took that step, even without Marie Kondo's counseling. We should get her on the show and see what she would say about this stuff. But there's a lot of similarities there. And I think what could be a cool pivot point here, there's a lot of quick hit items that we want to talk about that are on the same theme but are different. Let's talk about the concept of ownership. Ownership of pictures in this digital era where one of the first things you do as things are getting hot and heavy in a relationship is like you start to exchange pictures.
Let me hit this one, Dominic. Still related to the conversation that we were just having about my ex-porn stash.
Yeah.
During this same time period when I was having a conversation with you about this, I also met up with a female mentor of mine.
Oh, right, yeah.
And as I'm telling her this story, she had this puzzled look on her face, and I couldn't figure out what she was thinking, other than maybe this guy's a monster. And she said, well, Bryan, like, yes, you're living in this gray zone with your girlfriend because you're doing something that isn't in total alignment with what you've established are the agreements in your relationship. She's like, but I have another question. What about all those exes? Aren't you kind of in a gray zone with all of those exes? Like, do they know that you still have all of this?
Yeah.
Like, do they know that you like look at it on a semi-regular basis? And I hadn't even thought about it.
Yeah.
Not even something that came into my consciousness.
Yep.
I felt like when she asked me that question, I was like, we made this together or they gave it to me. Like, why shouldn't I be able to look at it? It's mine. Right? So when you say ownership, that's what triggers. And to your point, in this digital age, who owns what? How long do we own it for? These pictures don't come with a time bomb,
an expiration date,
an expiration date on them.
Yeah,
right. And so I didn't even think about the let's call it the third party in this situation,
totally,
which was my exes.
So these exes, presumably, some of them are in deep relationships, maybe married, maybe with kids, and then you still have them in their stash. And it's like, what questions does that raise? For me, a scenario was last year. I ended up meeting someone who was, I was at like some event. And she and I had this immediate connection. She lives out of the country, and we just hit it off. There was chemistry, pictures were flying, scenarios were flying. Like, we hooked up while she was here, and then when she went back to her home country, she ended up in a relationship with someone very shortly thereafter. That relationship had a lot of potential. So she and I transitioned to friends. We didn't have any sexual conversations. She was telling me how much she really cared for this guy. And 3 or 4 months into it, I'm like, wow, this is going to be, she may end up with this guy forever. Shortly thereafter, they broke up. That relationship spanned maybe 4 months. And then she and I get back into the whole old habit of things, right? Talking about her coming to here, us getting back in bed together. And I was like, gotta admit to you, some of the pictures that you sent me, I still have, and I still fantasize about. And she was like, oh yeah, I have all the pictures that you sent me too. And a light bulb went off in my head and I was like, here she was in a relationship where I thought that maybe like that was the one for her. And yet somewhere in her private moments or her secret stash, there were pictures of me. And I was like, I wonder how he might have felt about that. But then I wasn't passing judgment on her because shit, like I've done that same thing, especially because like if you have an iPhone, in your iMessages, any picture that's exchanged, if you go into whatever that folder is, all of the pictures that you have ever sent back and forth to each other are there. And so even if like you clean up the stash that's on the external hard drive, there's still all of the text message chains.
There's definitely still stuff out there.
There's definitely still stuff out there. And dude, check this out. Like this just happening to me right now, okay? My most recent...
Live from the Man Amongst Men podcast, Dominic going through some shit.
Breaking news. There was a woman... We defined our relationship as she was my intimacy partner. So we had an explicit agreement that we were going to be intimate with one another, and it wasn't going to be a committed relationship because like the foundation or the parts of our dynamic weren't there to build on that. But we had this amazing, respectful, and intense physical chemistry that we explored. So we get together like 2 or 3 times a month. And that happened for like over the course of a year until it was determined for both of us that we wanted to really free up some space to find a partner like that we could build a future with. And one of the things that I did in alignment with what you and I are talking about right now was I deleted all of the videos and all of the pictures that we had sent back and forth to each other. I went on my iPhone, text messages, got rid of them immediately.
And that was an agreement that you had with her, or was that just you did it on your own?
It was actually, I did it on my own because she was like, you don't have to.
Okay.
She said, like, you do not have to do that. But like for me, I knew from previous times, like getting rid of those things does in fact allow me to move forward. And so I deleted all of that and I was moving along fine for 2 months. Hadn't reached out to her, I'd thought about, because I haven't been able to find someone that I'm intimate with, and I'm missing that. And then I went on my iPad to send her a message, clicked open the old iMessage chain, and all of the pictures and all of the videos were still on the iMessage on my iPad. So if you delete something on your phone does not mean...
I'm starting to sweat right now.
Yes.
Do I still have my stash?
I know, dude.
Oh my God.
You got to go check that out.
This stash started pre-iMessage, so...
Okay.
Very
you're
safe.
Clean. You're good. Okay. So you have to go through 2 channels.
Right.
And what happened was I was in a moment of weakness. I went and I watched all the videos again. I'm back into wanting her again. And then I found myself reaching out to her, not to set a date to do those things, but I found myself I'm already on the slippery slope. Do you know what I'm saying? Her birthday's coming up, and I'm
really interesting. So you had the intent to delete and did.
Yep.
By the act of the internet gods, it came back into your existence.
Yep.
And that triggered something else in you, which is some sort of longing, the connection that you had with her, and probably the romanticized version of it.
Because they always find you in your weakest moments, dude. Here's what I found. It's and then this also goes into the arena of all the people that you've hooked up with in your past, you're connected to on social media, or you're like, oh, I'm just friends with them. I want to see how they're doing. You're friends with them on Facebook. You follow them on Instagram.
And it always starts innocently.
It's so innocent. It's oh yeah, we're just friends now. But you used to bang the snot out of them. I
just had a question. How do you get from here to Central Park?
Right.
That's how it starts.
Right. Yeah. And then
do you want to meet in Central Park? Do you want to go back to my place? It's only a 2-stop trip. Let's go.
Exactly. This is how this stuff. And dude, it's only in your weakest of moments does that porn stash resurface. Does that person scroll through your social media feed looking perfect? They're wearing the dress for a night out. They're in a bikini in Aruba. In your moment of weakness, they appear. And then all of a sudden that fantasy starts to kick up. And if it's in a moment where you're lonely, because maybe you're not in a relationship, or you're in a relationship and things are just in a dip, then you start to go down that rabbit hole. And I know that a lot of the men that we've spoken to have experienced that. So it begs the question of what is the environment that you've created for yourself with the socials? Are you still connected to and attached to a lot of the people that you still have, say, fantasies with, or could go down that rabbit hole with? And is that healthy? Is that clean? Even if you have the best of intentions, like I had, it can pop its head up at the worst times.
And Dominic, I don't think that we're saying to create an environment where nothing ever pops up. It's impossible.
Right.
Things will pop up, whether it's a stash or iMessages or seeing somebody in the street or Facebook, especially this day. It's going to pop up. The tools that we're introducing at Discerning Dick, our live event in this podcast, is the ability to pause.
Yeah.
And say, okay, I know I'm on this slope. Or, okay, this is a gray zone area. I now recognize this gray zone area.
Yep.
What do I want to do with it? And having that capability in us, that recognition in us to be got it. This is why I'm feeling this. Now I have a decision to make.
Totally.
Is what we're doing here. It's always going to pop up.
You're never going to be able to eliminate those pop-ups completely. You shouldn't create an environment where there's an inordinate amount of pop-ups that you have to deal with, because what you then rely on consistently is willpower and discipline to overcome that. And it's kind of like if you go to bed and you have a pile of donuts next to your bed that you go to bed next to and wake up next to, you may have discipline for a while and ignore those donuts. One of these days, you're going to wake up or go to bed and you're like, I'm going to eat that entire thing. So it's can you, in a moment of strength, like you did, which is eliminate your stash, like I eliminated my stash, eliminate that eliminates thousands of future decisions where you would have to rely on your willpower and discipline. As we're talking about this right now, I'm going to go get my iPad in a moment of power right now. This is real time. I'm going to go delete that text message thread that has all of those pictures and videos on it, because I'm going to course correct, start talking.
You don't have to do it right now.
I'm doing it right now. It's happening.
And it's about creating the environment for success, right?
Well, here comes the environment right here.
That's the deletion noise. There it is.
Brian did a great deletion noise. Look, I'm pushing this button. I'm trying to delete this. It's like, won't allow me. Here we go.
It's a sign.
See this red button? Delete.
There it is, deleted.
And delete.
And now you have to delete out of your deleted. And now you have to delete out of your iCloud.
Oh my God. Gone. Okay. I'm pretty sure that's gone. Thank you for this.
How do you feel now?
Actually, I feel really good about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because what's interesting is if you had asked me last night when I was looking at it, I wouldn't have wanted to. But that's why these kind of conversations are so powerful. Maybe as you're listening to this right now and you're feeling empowered to do it, like do it. I'm going to tell my story about when I was in Sex Addicts Anonymous, and it's a fairly quick one about like when I had to get rid of my stash. For me, I had a stash of pictures and videos of porn stars that I liked, pictures and videos of women that I had spent 15 years accumulating. These are women who like I met online, who sent me their pictures. And every single one of them had a different story that I could call upon. It was like going to my favorite chapter in a book and being able to read it when I needed it, you know? Or going into your cupboard and eating that thing. Oh, I want chocolate today. Oh, I want a bowl of cereal this time. Or, oh, I want, a candy bar. Like I always knew I could go in and get what I needed. When I was struggling with sex addiction, it was one of those things that I was constantly in an isolated state. That was my stash, was my place to go to get my needs met. And it was old, reliable. It worked every single time.
And this is Dominic. This is before you were in Sex Addicts Anonymous.
This was before. I'm sorry. Yeah, that was before I was in Sex Addicts Anonymous. And I'd grown mine to the size of a mighty oak tree. Right? Like this was something I'd never gotten rid of, like you did in college. It was just accumulated. And again, I also never thought about it as something that was bad or whatever. It was just a thing that I had, and I carried that into a relationship with me the same way. When I entered Sex Addicts Anonymous, one of the things that you do is it's time to delete everything. Like you got to let go of the attachments and the places that you go that perpetuate the same behavior going forward. There's a great movie about sex addiction called Thank You for Sharing. Gwyneth Paltrow's in it. Pink is in it. I think, was it Anthony Robbins? The guy in Shawshank Redemption?
Oh, yes.
Andy Dufresne, whatever his character is. No, it's not Tony Robbins. I think it's Tim Robbins.
Tim Robbins. Yeah.
It's a great movie to kind of get a sense for like what sex addiction can look and feel like. And there's this one scene where there's a kid who has to get rid of his entire porn stash. And he's got like an apartment full of it, like DVDs and VHS cassette tapes and then everything on his hard drive. And Pink, the singer, like she's an actress in the movie, goes over and helps him clean all this stuff out. It can be a painful process. Like I said before, you almost can come to personify it as a friend, as something that like allows you to get past some of those times. Getting rid of it, for me, I think maybe for the first 2 or 3 weeks or maybe even a month, I did have some withdrawal symptoms. Like there were these moments where I wasn't even thinking. I would go back onto the computer and try and like access it, and it wasn't there anymore because that muscle had been built, just reflex. And when it was gone, it was like an oh shit moment. But after getting through the eye of the storm after that first month for me, what it did was it completely cleared up a space for my girlfriend and I, because at the time, like I was still repairing my relationship with my girlfriend. When there was no other distraction, that stash was gone. I wasn't giving my sexual energy to anyone else in the stash. I was no longer looking at porn because when I entered Sex Addicts Anonymous for 4 years, I stopped watching porn, which was something that was absolutely one of the best practices, one of the greatest like experiments I ever did. There was no energy that was diverted from our relationship anymore. It was just her.
I love the way you describe that, because if we look at everything we do as energy and how much energy, how much attention are we giving to the relationship, and then what are the things that are sapping that energy away from it, we can start to identify those things that seemingly aren't that big of a deal. But in this case, what you found was porn actually was sapping, or your stash was sapping some energy away from the relationship. So
totally.
Go into like, what did you do with that new energy?
Yeah, the new energy, it was like, picture wild horses flying off in every direction. Harnesses on all of them, but they're going like north, south, east, west, up and down. Like you're being pulled in a million different directions. Like your body's just like physically straining to hold on to all of them. This was kind of like being able to align them up. Like those Clydesdales, the Budweiser Clydesdales that are just like in alignment, walking in lockstep. It felt powerful and it felt like I had command of it. And it was totally intentional with her. And what happened when I focused all that energy and attention with her, I started to experience things that I never experienced before. Like I could touch her body and I could feel electricity when I touched her and she touched me. Versus like with all this other fantasy,
like shocks, like you shocked her.
No, it wasn't like if you're like going across a carpet and then you touch a door handle and you shock yourself.
Because that sounds shitty. I don't want to do that.
No, it didn't feel like that.
Yeah.
It felt like just like this energy, like we were almost one. You know what I mean? Like when my hand touched her body, I felt like we were connected. There's no other way of I can't figure out a better way to describe it. And when she touched me, I could feel the ripple through my body. So like say she touched my chest, I could feel it start in my chest and I could feel her touch go all the way down throughout the rest of my body.
So Dominic, do you believe then that this porn stash that you had, your go-to, unknowingly was a block in having those sensations and those feelings?
Yeah, because I mean, like if you have a finite amount of energy, which we all do, if I was dedicating 1% to that, 1% to porn, 10% to here, 10% to there, and then 5% to the person who's the most intimate relationship in my life, she's going to feel 5% of me and I'm going to feel 5% of her. Once all of that was focused on her, these small sensations started coming back. Like I could smell the shampoo she would wear. I could taste her skin in a different way. The porn bodies that I used to need were gone, and like her physical like feminine body was so beautiful, and I can explore like the crevices that I would have overlooked because I was just focused on like the ass or the tits or thinking about
you really got into that armpit, didn't you?
That's none of your business, man.
Great crevice.
There are other crevices that I'm really into. That's a different conversation. Those spots, man, that I never really slowed down to really explore with her, and she could feel that. And it opened her up more. She became more turned on. She wanted to please me more. It was all because I'd focused that energy and attention. And here's the beautiful part, man. We talk to so many guys who are constantly like, how do I get my wife to do this? How do I get my girlfriend to do that? How do I get her to do this? Like the woman has something that the man wants and he wants to take it from her, extract it from her. How do you give that to me? When I started to change my own behaviors, and I didn't ask her to do anything differently, everything changed. Because I showed up as a more loving, more present, more compassionate, more desirable, more lusting of her man. Everything shifted, and everything that I could have wanted, I got without ever having to ask for it, and more. That's one of the payoffs that like you can experience. It almost sounded like
unknown payoffs unless you've gone through the process. Right?
Yeah,
because when you're getting when I'm getting rid of my stash, when you're getting rid of your stash, it's a loss. We're losing something that we're used to that gave us some sort of pleasure.
Yeah.
Right? But when we get rid of it, we're like, why? Why are we doing this?
Right?
Like, why are we torturing ourselves? But what you're describing is this payoff that comes with this type of activity and focusing the energies onto, in this case, a single person.
That's a really profound way of looking at it. Is like, as you're thinking about this, do not think about getting rid of the old text messages or getting rid of the stash as a loss. It is an investment in something bigger, something beyond, like moving past what's this anchor that's been there for 10 or 15 years. And it's an anchor that helps in the short term. It's kind of like, maybe fast food or a pint of Ben & Jerry's is cool in the short term to help you overcome that thing that sucks in the moment. If you keep using it as a crutch going forward, what is it preventing you from in the future? So yes, this is something that allows you a gain that you can't even imagine.
Dominic, right now we're talking about these gray zone areas. And these are these areas where like, is it right? Is it wrong? I'm not totally sure. Let me think about it. I like to look at and blow these out into very extreme, very black and white examples to see when this goes in that direction, what does this little energy sapping, energy diversion look like? A couple days ago, I was watching a documentary called The Heart of Man on Netflix. Okay. And it was about 3 guys that were choosing infidelity as a way of life without telling their wives, like zero transparency or anything else. What they all described was this feeling after the first time of doing it. So it wasn't the 17th time, but after the first time of doing it.
Doing what? Like of cheating, stepping out on their wives?
Stepping out on their wives, cheating. Maybe it was a one-night stand. They met somebody online. Whatever it was, they were cheating on their wives.
Okay.
What they described was how they then acted in life after that without even realizing it.
So after the very first time stepping out, how that changed their behavior in life right after that. Okay.
Exactly. And their behavior was one of having to manage their actions, having to constantly worried about getting caught, just doing enough to get by.
The cover-ups.
The cover-ups. And that permeated the rest of their lives, in their work lives, other relationships, not the infidelity relationship with the wife, but with their kids even, with their guy friends. And so they started to live this smaller life. They started to have less energy. They were more drained. They were more stressed out because of all of this. Now, that's the extreme.
Was that after the first time, or like after the first time and then they kept on going and then the cover-ups required all of that extra energy and
So
focus?
it was after the first time they started feeling this. Now, this is a retrospective, right?
Yep.
So they're looking back at anywhere between 5 to 15 years of this kind of behavior.
Yeah.
And they're like, man, after that first time, I can now look back and recognize I used to have this light in me. I used to have this like energy in me. And even after that first time, I felt that started to dim because I immediately started having to manage who I was and who my perceived version of me was.
Public and private
who my
life.
private version of me was. Yeah. And so, again, that's not what we're talking about here. That's very black and white, like wrong or right. They were breaking agreements that they had with their wives.
Yep.
But bring it back down to us, right? In these gray zone areas that we have.
Yep.
And it's still, maybe we're not losing a ton of energy, but I think it's fair to say that even if we don't know it, there is an energy leakage that's going on in these gray zone areas.
One of the things I'm confronted with quite a bit, especially as I go into corporate spaces and I do a lot of keynote speaking and I talk to people who are a lot of men who are in their 40s and 50s who have built very successful lives, is that something happens along the way where they feel like their fire starts to dim a little bit, and that feeling of aliveness is elusive. And the way that a lot of men seek that feeling of aliveness is through what you just described. Whether it's stepping out on their wife, whether it's doing a new room massage, whether it's being on Tinder as a married man to see what else is out there, is because like there are these moments of excitement, of spontaneity, of mystery, of maybe even getting caught. Those feelings of aliveness are what men are seeking. They're just doing it in a way that has short-term gains, long-term consequences. And one of the bigger themes that you're hitting on here, and I know because I've lived it personally, is at that point in time where you diverge, you create a public and a private life. And that public and private life at first feels very close to being the same person. But as you step deeper and deeper into that private life, that is different than the public image that you've curated. Because maybe now you're cheating more. Maybe now you have a Tinder account and you have someone in like a different city that you fly to for business all the time. And now you have a relationship with that person. Whatever it is, those things that made you feel alive at first now require twice as much energy to cover up. And over time, the energy that's required to maintain both of those existences starts to become overwhelming. It does eventually collapse. It does break down. It did for me. At the height of my addiction, I was bouncing back and forth between boom and bust energy. Feelings of intensity, like when I was on my way to go on a tryst with someone, and that would be like this super, almost like drug-like energy coursing through my body. And then I would just be exhausted afterwards. I wouldn't have any desire or motivation to do really much of anything for a period of time. And then to get out of that state of being, I would need to create another scenario to go on. It's just like the cycle perpetuated itself. And thank God, eventually I ended up getting caught so that like I could interrupt that cycle and change the course of my life. Too many men never get that wake-up call. And what you and I are trying to do is to create that space between stimulus and response where you don't have to devastate someone else in order for you to break your own cycle. You can stop it before it starts. And that's really like what this conversation today is about. So that doesn't have to mushroom into something bigger than it needs to be. So what do you say we give a couple of action steps here, for someone who's been moved by this episode? Two things that we want you to look at. Number one, if you have a stash that you've accumulated, whether it's a porn stash, whether it's a stash of text messages and videos and things that like you've kind of gone back to as old reliable, maybe it's time to do a tidying up experience where you say, thank you for your service and it's time to move on. But to do so from a place that Bryan, you mentioned before, which is it's not a loss. What would you be gaining as a result of it?
Yeah, don't do this because you're certainly not going to do this because we're saying to do it.
Right.
You're not going to feel great about it if your significant other is telling you to do it. Explore that internally. Figure out, is that in alignment with you? Is potentially that an energy leak?
Yeah. Is it an energy leak that you can now harness, again, like those horses coming into alignment, that you can now command what direction they're going into.
It could be a stash. I would pose the same question that those guys posed back at me on the bachelor party. What are you doing in your life that if your significant other found out about, might be a little pissed off or disappointed or sad?
Yes.
Right? Very different, but...
And do that from a place of non-judgment of yourself. Don't look at yourself as, I'm a horrible human being because I'm doing that thing. It's providing you some sort of payoff. And so ask yourself the question of, what is the payoff that I'm receiving? So for many of the guys that we talk to, it's, I'm not having the kind of sexual chemistry with my partner. Maybe she's distant, or and I don't know why. I'm using that as my means to get these needs met. Well, go into that. Go into that as deeply as you possibly can without judging yourself, and then find out what's keeping you tethered. Through that awareness, you can start to unpack and maybe make different decisions. The second place to look at is look at your social accounts. Find out who you're following, who you're connected to, that maybe you hooked up with in the past and you're hanging on to in some regard, that in your moment of weakness, they're going to pop up looking the best that they ever have, and you're going to go down that spiral. Say thank you and goodbye, unfriend, unfollow. It will create new space for you. And those landmines, that plate of donuts that you put next to your bed that you have to constantly override with willpower and discipline, that stuff is now going to start to dissolve and create fewer of those moments for you to go off track.
This is the Marie Kondo cleaning of your environment.
Of your social accounts.
Of your social accounts, porn stashes.
I'm telling you, man, we could use Marie Kondo's, her whole methodology, the KonMari method, for cleaning out your porn stashes, for cleaning out your old relationships. I'm going to see if she wants to write a book with us. I think this is totally on brand for her.
It's not, Dominic. It's not. But I like the concept. Yes.
I like the concept too. If you have decided to take action on this, we would love to know, what did you get rid of? How did you do it? Did you talk to your partner about it? How did this all go down? Because we want to know the stories about how you went about it, because we want to share this with our audience.
Yeah, and making this very real. These are two scenarios that Dominic and I went through that were very real. And we also understand there's guys in different situations, in which case maybe the porn stash should stick around and it serves a purpose. So curious to see what happens.
Let us know. Hey, thanks for listening to the Man Amongst Men podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And if you want more access to tools and resources, and you want information on our upcoming live events and retreats, head on over to www.doinnerwork.com.